Tony, welcome. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. Always good to be here with you.
I'm looking forward to this conversation to tap into your experience and expertise. We're going to be talking about the pharmacist guide to financing a home purchase, and specifically want to talk in three main areas: how to know and understand your budget, how to evaluate different loan options and lenders and determining what the right fit is, and ultimately getting to the point of pre-approval so that those that are in the home buying process, whether it's a first time or a second time or a third time, that they can go out and do what they ultimately want to do, which is look at homes and make offers on homes. Tony, before we jump into that, give us a brief introduction to yourself and the work that you do currently at First Horizon.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Well, I have been in the lending business now. It'll almost 23 years. It'll be 23 years in a couple of months here. So I've been doing this a long time, and I'm just very blessed to have just an outstanding team. I've had some of my employees have been with me 18 years, and we just, our goal is just to help our clients succeed in purchasing a home and sometimes refinance. But the home buying process is normally what we're working with folks on. But yeah, it's been a fun career.
I always appreciate your perspective, Tony. I know we've talked on the podcast many times before, and you bring a really fresh perspective, not only in the experience you've had working with many individuals, pharmacists, non-pharmacists, other healthcare professionals, yeah, as it relates to their own lending process, but also we geek out from time to time on what's going on in current economic trends and how that's impacting interest rates and all the fun stuff. Today, we're going to talk about Pharmacist Guide to Financing the home purchase. And specifically, as I mentioned, want to talk in three areas that folks are often thinking about. Am I ready to buy? So understanding the budget, looking at the different loan options, and then ultimately getting to that point of pre-approval and why that pre-approval is so important to the process of getting that home. Let's start with the budget, Tony. For pharmacists that are purchasing a home, again, it can be the first home or maybe not even their first home. It's so important that they understand what is the budget for them individually and how that fits in with other financial goals, right? For many pharmacists, it might be, hey, not only are we looking at buying a home, but we also maybe have some student loan debt. Maybe we've got a young family that we're raising. We're trying to save for retirement, right? There's all these different goals that are happening. And it's important that we look at the budget for buying a home, both individually from our perspective, but also understand how the bank determines the budget and what that person can afford in buying a home. Talk to us about this first item of knowing your budget when it comes to purchasing the home.
Yeah, and Tim, you're right on. I mean, this is the most critical step. And I think I'm going to touch a little bit on what we look at as a lender and what you're allowed to, what your ratios can be from our eyes, but also individually, everyone's situation is different. And, we all have different, spending patterns. Some people want, to travel more, right? Or they might want a bigger home or whatever it might be. So everyone's budget's different. I think looking at this to start with your comfort level is the first thing to look at. Are you comfortable with on a monthly basis to allocate to housing costs? Now we all know renting costs a lot too. And then of course, over time, rents don't stay stagnant. They typically go up, and so does rental insurance. So rental costs normally go higher over time. The one nice thing I find about homeownership is we always normally lock a 30-year fixed loan. So you have a more or less a level set cost of homeownership. And if rates dip, you can actually grab a lower payment. So that's one advantage of homeownership. But of course, I'd say first address your personal budget first. Secondarily, from our eyes as a lender, we are typically not going to allow an individual to borrow more than 43% of their gross income. Okay. So that means your overall debts cannot be more than 43% of your gross income. So we'll take a kind of an easy example, a $10,000 per month gross income. Okay. Which is pretty typical for what I see for a lot of pharmacists that are out there. And you have student loans. You may have a car payment, right? 43% of that is $4,300 a month, right? So including the mortgage payment, including the car payment, including the student loan payment, if it's an income-based repayment, right? It can't be more than $4,300. So that's how lenders view this. Now, 43% debt to income ratio is the normal metric. There is times where we can go higher. Okay. So there's compensating factors. Some products, especially if you're putting more money down, more than 20% down or 20% down, for example, there are instances with better credit, you can get up closer to 49% debt to income ratio. But I'm just kind of giving you more of a broad-based view with a limited down loan program. You're normally looking at 43%. So that's what a lender is going to, and that's pretty universal across the nation, all lenders.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do here, Tony, is strike the balance between, what the bank is going to allow for us so that we can ultimately get into a home. It's a goal for many pharmacists that I
Sure.
speak with, and it's an admirable goal. And we know that over time, historically speaking, houses will appreciate and grow in value. And there's a mathematical value to owning a home, but there's also just a sense of, hey, I've got my own place, right? And being a part of a community and a neighborhood and being able to remodel. I mean, all of those benefits that come with home ownership. And so it's understandable that that's a goal for many
Absolutely.
pharmacists, especially ones that are earlier in their career. And so we're trying to strike the balance of achieving that goal while preventing ourselves from becoming house poor, right? When we look at student loans, when we look at other debts that we might incur, obviously now we're looking at the home purchase. And to your point, obviously, typically a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, that's going to help keep that price flat depending on where interest rates are and whether or not we refinance that loan into the future. And there are other costs we always want to consider, like, hey, what's happening with property taxes and where are those trending, and upkeep and maintenance of the home and furnishing the home and projects that you're going to do at the home, right? All those things. And so we want to find that right balance between affordability in terms of getting that loan and achieving that goal we have of purchasing the home, while also making sure that we're balancing it with other goals that we have, whether that be debt repayment or saving, investing for the future, and prioritizing those goals. And I think you articulated so well, hey, here's what the bank's going to be looking at, but also you have to look at your own budget. And we need to come together
Sure.
on those two things. The second area, Tony, I want to talk about beyond knowing your budget is evaluating the loan options that are out there and ultimately working with a lender and how you determine what lender you're going to work with. And one of the things you've really taught me over time is that it's valuable to understand what the loan options are that are out there, whether it be a conventional 20% down or something like an FHA loan or a pharmacist home loan product that we'll talk about here in a moment. But if you're working with a lender that's a good fit in terms of someone that's going to allow you to move your process forward, has good communication, all the things that we want in that lending process, they will play a significant role in helping you determine what is the best product or the best fit in the moment. So, talk to us more about that relationship, why it's so important. And at a high level, what are the different loan options that are out there?
Sure, sure. Yeah, as Tim alluded to, having someone that you have confidence in and a firm you have confidence in is critical. Communication in a lending process is also very important when you're buying a home. I tell people that there's some online options out there for refinancing. I'm not going to name anything, not to be critical. When you're refinancing, it's okay, but when you have timelines that you have to hit, milestones in a contract, a commitment letter deadline, there's an appraisal deadline, a closing deadline, sometimes 30 days or less, you definitely have to have a lender that's not outsourcing your file to a call center for processing and underwriting. So communication service is very important. Product is important. Everyone is different. Everybody is different. So, Tim mentioned FHA loans. That's not my first product that I look at for a pharmacist or for any client, but sometimes it's the best one. It just depends on your situation, because some rates ebb and flow, and sometimes these Ginnie Mae rates or FHA, they tend to be really, really good. If I see a pricing discrepancy in the market, we're going to recommend it. And there's other products out there too. Some are zip code driven. We've had a few of those programs have been able to offer based upon the zip code and individuals buying in. So it's very important that you look at all the options available. And of course, if you're a pharmacist, there's a product available for pharmacists that tends to be very, very strong as well. So we want to look at all the options and find the best solution for you and for that individual. But again, communication is important. Understanding the process is important. feedback is important. And I think that those are the sometimes the missing links. There's different types of lenders out there. There's very, very large mega banks. There is, smaller banks like myself that kind of have control of the process. Then you have independent mortgage lenders that typically have control over the process, may not have the same pricing as a bank. So there's all sorts of different types for different needs that are out there. Sometimes those independent lenders are very good for very creative situations if your credit's in tough shape and things like that. So everyone's got a place where they can help. So those are, just some of the options out there. But I think at the end of the day, communication is very important, and good products is important too.
Yeah, and going through this now a few times, 2 times on the home purchase, once on the refinance side of things. To your point about the communication, I've learned firsthand just how important that is, and perhaps a little bit old school, but I wanna be able to know a person, a relationship, someone I can pick up the phone and call, and I made the mistake early on of doing the online search, putting my information in, and my phone was off the hook for it felt like a week, straight. And I've worked with a large bank where there wasn't a consistent relationship in person. And when you're talking about one of the biggest purchases you're ever going to make, that typically also has a lot of emotions that can surround that. It can be a stressful time. It can be an exciting time. There's questions that need to get answered quickly, especially if you're going through it for the first time. There's probably more questions that you have. Having a team and a person that you can work with is incredibly important. And that is one piece that really attracted me, Tony, when we first started collaborating several years ago with First Horizon. At the time was Iberia Bank, now First Horizon, on the Pharmacist Home Loan product. It was an opportunity for pharmacists to have access to a lending product nationwide. We've got a national audience. So the Pharmacist Home Loan, available in the lower 48, sorry to our friends in Alaska and Hawaii, but also has that relationship component. And third is very attractive for many pharmacists, because for those that are just getting started out, especially with student loans, with other goals, coming up with a conventional 20% down payment on a home, especially in today's market, can be a challenge, right? A lot of pharmacists that are doing well income wise, but may not necessarily have the cash available. If you buy a $500,000 home, 20% down, and you need $100,000 in cash. A lot of new graduates look at that and say, where, Tim? Like, how am I going to save $100,000 in cash? And so one of the main benefits of the Pharmacist Home Loan product through First Horizon is that we can potentially get that home purchase in place at a lower down payment without having to pay PMI or private mortgage insurance. So give us the ins and outs, Tony, of the Pharmacist Home Loan product that is offered through First Horizon.
Sure, sure. Well, the product, the first major advantage is it can be very little down payment, 3 to 5% down, and there's no PMI. So that's the big driver, not having PMI, and you can put a very small a down payment down. You mentioned student loans. It does take a lower factor than the traditional products. So meaning that if your student loans are not being if they're not currently an income-based repayment, they're in deferment, or they're deferment typically, but the factor used will be less than a conventional loan or FHA loan. Okay, so a normal conventional or FHA loan. The other nice part is there's no prepayment penalty. There's no real reserve requirements. And sometimes these products require reserves, like our doctor product does for physicians. But those are typically the larger loan amounts, but there's more of a reserve requirement. This one does not. And the ability to get a 30-year fixed as well. So it's kind of like, it's not an ARM. Sometimes these programs are ARM specifically that are niche programs. And you do have the ability to get a 30-year fix. So those are some of the benefits of it. There is, and from this does tend to go up over time. I just wanted to address this, is the loan amount. There is a maximum loan amount. There's no minimum loan amount, but there's a maximum loan amount. And that currently, as of 2025, as of this recording, it's $806,550. I believe it'll go up over time. So this will be something that over time will probably continue to escalate. It kind of goes with the average price of homes, which has been growing over the years. So that's one of the restrictions is the maximum loan amount. But overall, it's been a great program. It's been able to help so many people, and we're happy to offer it.
So just a few of those highlights again. So you mentioned the maximum loan amount. One thing I think we didn't address would be a minimum credit score of 700.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, yes, yeah. No, Tim, you're right on. 700 is the minimum credit score. Yes, yes,
Lower down payment, obviously, than we typically see with a conventional loan, significantly lower. You mentioned the 3 to 5%, 30-year
yeah.
fixed rate option, which is important for many pharmacists and available nationwide. So we've got more information on the website. We'll also link to it here in the show notes. But if you go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan, that will take you to a page of our website to learn more information, recap some of what we just talked about here, and get in touch with Tony and his team if that's something you're interested in learning more about. And there's a reason why we have this as a second item that we're talking about, that if we know our budget, one of the knocks that I'll typically hear, Tony, and when it comes to a product like this that, doesn't require us to put 20% down, is, are we prematurely making the home purchase before we're ready? And that's why step number one is the readiness question. Are we ready to purchase a home? Where does it fit in the budget? Once we answer that question, then we can feel confident potentially with a product like this, lower down payment that's going to allow us to use cash in other parts of the financial plan. So, as we say all the time, we don't want to look at any of these in a silo, right? Know the budget, and then we can look at the loan options and feel confident about that. Third on our list, Tony, here is getting pre approved. So, once we understand our budget, we answer the question, are we ready? We look at the different loan options. We've got a relationship with the lender. Ultimately, we get to this point where we want to have a pre approval that we can then go out and start to look at homes and make offers confidently. So, tell us a little bit about the pre approval process and how that's different from what I'm seeing a lot out there, which is a pre qualification, and why those aren't the same thing.
Sure. No, great question. I think, and anyone who's bought a home or has been searching for a home, the real estate community, the realtors in our communities, they know the difference and they want those pre-approvals. They want to know that basically the difference. We'll outline that first. Pre-qualification is very easy. You can just put your income in, estimated credit score, and it's going to give you some letter stating, okay, it's unverified, which is the key here, unverified, that you can afford, let's say, a $500,000 loan based upon your income, your debts, and all the things that you stated. The pre-approval, we're actually going to review a pay stub or a W-2. We're going to run credit. We're going to run a debt to income ratio. And that is very important. That means it's been done and validated by a lender. So the pre-approval letters are really a requirement now in most areas of the country. The real estate agents, those in the real estate community, builders included, they're going to want that sometimes before you see the home. I mean, I get a lot of requests for that. Hey, I'm getting ready to take, this client out. They mentioned they're working with you. I need to see this letter before, I take. So it's a very, very common thing that you're going to run into. Very important you do this before you search for homes to get that pre-approval. It's very, very important because two things it does. It could either reset your expectations of what you can buy very quickly, or it can open your mind that, hey, I'm able to do this. I have the margin in my finances, because margin is very important. We don't always know. I have the margin to do this, and I can still save what I want to save. I can still spend what I want to spend. So having that pre-approval is very, very critical. The process itself is not too time intensive, and every lender has a little bit different process, but we're kind of the same in a lot of ways. You definitely can have interaction over the phone. I find today that a lot of my clients are busy. They'll text me or email me, and we actually have a great technology. I mean, technology has really helped over the years. I mean, when I first started, I met with like half my clients or more in person. That's the way it was. And, I enter the data right there on my computer, and, loan application would be printed and they'd sign it. And that's how things work. Things have evolved over time, and we use a technology now that is just very interactive. You can fill out the information when you'd like to. It'll remind you of what's needed. It'll actually tell you, hey, we need a pay stub. We need a W-2. We need a bank statement. It'll walk you through what you need. It'll even allow you to link certain accounts. Like if you're being paid through ADP or it might be, it'll pull your pay stub right in with a passcode. So there is some technology enhancements that help now. And then once we have a file, an application in our system, it's very easy for us to run it. and we can run credit. We can combine that all together and then generate that pre-approval letter. But typically, just so you're ready and prepared when you go approach a lender for a pre-approval, lenders are going to need to know your income, your assets, and your liabilities. Typically, the easiest way to get liabilities is through your credit report. It's going to import your liabilities into the lender's system. The income is either going to be your pay stubs, your W-2s, or your tax returns. If you have some self-employment income, or maybe you're a pharmacist, your spouse is self-employed, having those tax returns might be necessary. But W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns are normally what's used to validate income. And then from a down payment perspective, it's going to be bank statements. Okay. Typically bank statements, or if you have an investment account, those can be used to validate a down payment as well. So those would be the things to be prepared for when you're ready to get pre-approved by them.
And typically that pre-approval lasts 60 days, 90 days. What's the timeline on that?
Yeah, good question. A great question. It's typically 90 days.
Okay.
90 days. And it's very easy to update. So 90 days is typically the time frame.
And I mentioned that to connect the point you made, which is, hey, before you're searching for homes, it's important to go through this process, because my experience tells me, in talking with other pharmacists, how quickly you can go from, hey, I'm thinking about buying in 6 to 12 months, to you look for homes, the conversations evolve, you start driving around, the market's kind of doing what it's doing right now, and okay, I'm ready. And it went from 6 to 12 months to 1 to 2 weeks, right? Giving a little bit of hyperbole as an example, but knowing we've got that 90-day window and we can update it. If you're in the window of, we're thinking about buying in the next several months, it's a good time to move that process forward. And thankfully, to your point, it's fairly easy for many pharmacists, especially who have W-2 income, one employer, unless there's self-employment income. And certainly we can work through that as well. But usually good high income earners, that's coming from one position, and usually stable employment, which makes a good applicant when it comes to lending. So Tony, this is great stuff, as we covered. Know your budget, know if you're ready, understanding what the loan options are, and finding that lender relationship, getting pre-approved, all really important pieces as we think about the financing of a home purchase and making sure that fits in with the rest of the financial plan. Again, for more information on the Pharmacist Home Loan and getting ready to purchase your home, go to yourfinancialpharmacist.com/home-loan. Lots more information and resources that are there available to you. Tony, thanks so much, as always, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Tim. Great to be here.